What's up, Dragon Brood? Today we're talking about a quirky product, new product for sure, where an old thing is kind of a new thing, using old stuff in a new way. That's very confusing. But we're going to be talking about Unfinity. Let's get to it. Alright, for starters, the set's called Unfinity. And no worries, we're not getting a product before the end of the year here, thank goodness, because we just had a set a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago. So this isn't going to release until April next year, April 1st, I believe, because, you know, April Fools and all that. But that's the good news. Now, the product is going to be a little bit confusing, but it does have some very cool things into it. And let's talk about what all these things are, because I think this is going to be a product that's useful and possibly more popular than the other unsets, strictly because of a whole new thing they're allowing with this one, but we'll get to that in a second. For starters, the theme is really quirky. They're going with a space circus, so everything's way over the top, performing things, bright colors, and everything's being done in space, which is something we really haven't done for Magic to date. I'm sure Universes Beyond will allow some stuff down the road because we know 40k is coming. But this makes for a pretty cool theme. And as you can see from the Rosewater article earlier, this art they previewed, they're going hard on this theme, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's very cool, and I like the idea that it's actually bringing these bright colors back, because we're kind of in a phase where everything's kind of dark and gloomy hanging out in Innistrad. And in typical unset form, they are taking the time to really lean into the humor aspect of everything they can do, which I kind of appreciate, because with Magic, you don't really get to do that regularly unless, you know, you get to maybe have one or two fun pieces of flavor text or art in a set. But this is a whole set that kind of lets them go wild with that theme. Now, we've set the baseline. Let's talk about one of the big things about this set. And that's the fact that you're no longer going to have silver border cards, at least not for this unset in Unfinity. And that's not in and of itself a problem, but it does change expectations, right? Because so far, every time we've gotten an unset, they've been silver border. And that was just a clear indication of these cards are not tournament legal, you can't use them in different formats, they're just for fun. But, to Wizards' credit, that also means a lot of people probably aren't going to buy it because they don't need those cards for anything outside of just casual player drafts. And, being who they are, you know, a business, you want to actually make more money. So to that end, these cards are not all going to be silver border. Matter of fact, none of them are going to be silver border. But that doesn't mean they're all going to be tournament legal. Rosewater explains this in his article by saying, since the last unset came out, they've kind of changed and shifted what they allow on a Magic card. As an example, the last unset had dice rolling mechanics, which were considered to be an unset thing. And, you know, they also reference other things, which you didn't really do in Magic. But since then, we've done D&D, totally referencing an entire different license. And then with that, we also got dice rolling mechanics in this past summer set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So now it's sort of like we open the forbidden door, and we can allow these things. So they're allowing it. Now you're probably asking, how do I know which ones are going to be tournament legal and which ones aren't? Well, in a weird way, it sounds like they've solved it in a interesting fashion. Probably the most elegant you could do if you're not going to have a border as an indicator. But they're going with a different type of watermark. Now, they put out an article this morning saying that, hey, we're introducing a watermark that's going to be an acorn and, you know, make it easy. So you look at a card, you'll be able to see an acorn watermark. Unfortunately, I don't have an image for it because they don't have any out yet, but that'll be one way to know. The other is that if you look at the foil stamp or the security stamp on the rares and mythics, those are also going to be shaped different. Taking a look here, this is what a normal Magic security stamp looks like on a rare or mythic card. However, here, if you notice, this little stamp on what's going to be the Unfinity cards is shaped like an acorn. Not 100% sure why it's an acorn yet, but at least you'll have another indicator. So rares and mythics will be notated by the security stamp. and then you'll have a watermark on every card that is not tournament legal. Now, where does this leave us? Well, we don't really know yet. There's a lot to still be revealed. They've talked about a lot of different foil things and galaxy stamped or foil stamping that's going to be done in the collector boosters. Yes, there's going to be collector's boosters for an unset, so that's a thing. But yeah, we don't know a lot yet. I mean, April's still 4 months, 5 months away, so we have a long time until we have to worry about that. But this is kind of just setting the ground rules and the expectations for, I guess, what an unset can be. But that does remind me, let's talk about the lands in this set, because this is going to be one of the key selling points. So there's going to be two types of what they're calling Spaceics. Cute name to say, Space Basics. Which, by the way, kind of cool. I don't have a problem with the name. And they have these cool little symbols here on the bottom. So you have like the atomic space thing going on. But you're going to be able to get planetary Spaceics, as they're calling them, which are basically views of the planet surface, representing each of the basic land types. And then there's also going to be what they're calling orbital Spaceics. So they'll look like a planet, which is different, but cool. We've never done something like this in Magic before. I think this is actually pretty sweet. And the art is really cool. I'd been kind of burnt out on full art lands, and these might be some of the first full art lands I'm actually interested in purchasing. And these are supposed to appear, I believe they said in the article, between 70 and 80% of the boosters should have these, so that's actually pretty damn cool. Shouldn't be too hard to get your hands on these if you want to get a full playset. If you buy a box, you should get enough or close to enough that you need, but if not, a few extras wouldn't be too hard to pick up. Possibly could be good long-term value on these as well. But then we have what they're calling the borderless shock lands. And this is interesting because these should be called Spock lands, if you will. But you're able to get these in regular and what they're calling galaxy foil. And these are very cool. Like, this art is interesting, it's fun, it's different. And these are going to be very, very rare. These are going to appear 1 per 24 booster packs, I believe they said. And then 1 in those 24, if I read that right, is going to be one of the foil versions. However, each box you buy, I believe collector's booster box, I'm not sure if they clarified the regular booster box. I'm gonna have to go back and check on draft boosters. But set booster boxes should come with a box topper that also is going to be a foil. So you're at least guaranteed one if you buy a full box, so that's cool. But yeah, this is totally different, something we've never done before. And come on, we gotta call these Spock lands, right? If the regular ones are shock lands, these are in space and they're shock lands, even if you're not a fan of Star Trek, we gotta make that a thing, right? Let me know in the comments if y'all think Spock lands is an appropriate name or not, because it kind of sort of feels like it has to be. And then one last thing I want to talk about, because I've already had a couple people messaging me because I'm on the Commander Advisory Group. They've asked, what about Commander? Like, normally you don't get to play with unsets in Commander. Well, what about stuff from Unfinity? Well, by default, the stuff that's legal is legal. The stuff that's not is not. So if you have a card from Unfinity you want to play with, and maybe it's a dice rolling card or something, and you have that mechanic built into your Commander deck, great, go for it. If it has an Acorn watermark or Acorn stamp, then the answer is going to be no. So it's kind of a clear way to delineate those, and we don't have to have a really long discussion about it and make it weird and awkward for everybody, because this should just be a simple thing. And yes, it is a departure from the other messaging where anything from an unset you couldn't play with, but really it was that anything in silver border you can't play with. But now that silver borders are possibly not going to exist, it's a new thing we have to address. But for now, pretty much keeping it simple. If it has an Acorn watermark or stamp, you can't play with it. If it doesn't, go hog wild. Do whatever you want. So yeah, that kind of wraps up everything we know so far on Unfinity. This is actually a pretty cool and interesting way to do an unset. I have to admit, it's probably going to lead to more sales of an unset, and according to Rosewater's article, the last unset actually did 4 printings, which is pretty good. Granted, all those printings are smaller, but still it means there's at least some popularity for the set. And I would expect this to be much more popular between the Spaceics, the Spock lands, and honestly just having cards that could potentially be impactful in tournament play. Now, I'm not expecting there to be something crazy over the top, but even if there's just a handful of useful cards, say like in a modern deck or two, or I don't know, 2 or 3 things that are popular in Commander, that could drive sales on this set as well. Just because you get more cool things that you can use, this might actually encourage more people to draft, because we're going to cross our fingers that by the time we get to April, we're further along with all this COVID mess and maybe more of us are gaming in our favorite local game stores again. Would be a cool way to come back, get to play some new, quirky, weird Unfinity, and, you know, hang out with people and get some cool cards to take home. So yeah, the timing could be very good on this set. It'll actually be in that window after Kamigawa, but before we get to Streets of New Capenna, so should have about 6 to 8 week clearance on either side. I have nothing to really complain about here. It's going to be quirky, the messaging, it's kind of weird not having silver borders, but beyond that, I don't think I have much to complain about. I think it's actually a interesting attempt at this. Not totally sure why it has to be an unset, other than just, you know, the humor and stuff doesn't have much place in Magic, but who knows? A year or two from now, after we're used to all of the Universes Beyond stuff, unsets may not even be a thing. Anyway, let me know what you thought about all this. Be sure to check all my links. Remember, if you're doing any holiday shopping through TCGPlayer, through Amazon, or Ultra Pro, use my affiliate links. We'll get a kickback here on the channel. You'll be helping me out. And as always, check out the memberships. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and let me know what you thought. This is a very interesting and different set, and I'm kind of curious what everybody's opinion are. I want to get the pulse of the room. That's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.